Terrorism. Separatist extremists in Quebec took a British diplomat hostage. And by the time it was all over, a Quebec cabinet minister had been...
October 17th, 1970, in the Montreal suburb of Longueuil, police move in on a late model Chevrolet Biscayne. What they are about to find will rock Canada.
FLQ was the terrifying result of years of frustration among French-Canadian ultranationalists. They said they got nowhere with words. Perhaps someone up there in Ottawa would listen to exploding bombs.
In the fall of 1970, the province of Quebec, Canada, was plagued by a series of events known as the October Crisis. Amidst political tension and separatist movements, a dark chapter unfolded. This is the story of the October Crisis. During this time, a radical separatist group called La Front de Libération de Québec, or better known as the FLQ, emerged in Quebec. Their activities would include violence and over 200 bombings targeting English communities and institutions in the pursuit of an independent Quebec. However, it was the kidnappings of two prominent figures that thrust the October Crisis into the national spotlight. On October 5, 1970, British diplomat James Cross was abducted from his Montreal home by the FLQ. Just days later, on October 10th, Quebec Minister of Labour Pierre Laporte was also kidnapped. The FLQ would demand the release of their imprisoned comrades and the publication of their manifesto in newspapers across Quebec. The FLQ manifesto demanded an independent Quebec and for Quebec to become a socialist country. It criticized the perceived dominance of English-speaking Canadians and advocated for an armed struggle for socialism like what had happened in Cuba. Manifesto aimed to mobilize support against the existing political system and promote a more equitable society. However, the FLQ's actions would prove otherwise. In response to the crisis, the Canadian government, led by Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, took swift and decisive action on October 16th. Trudeau invoked the War Measures Act, granting the government extraordinary power to restore order.
Pierre Trudeau put soldiers on the streets of Ottawa. Other soldiers protect prominent politicians, like the young cabinet minister Jean Chrétien.
You know, I'd go home in a car with policemen having a machine gun.
Thousands of troops would be deployed across Quebec, working alongside law enforcement agencies in the over 2-month-long search for the FLQ members. Eventually, negotiations would begin. After weeks of intense negotiations and a tense standoff, the October Crisis finally reached its conclusion. On December 3rd, 1970, Pierre Laporte's body was tragically discovered in the trunk of a car. It was a devastating blow to the nation. However, the crisis would take a surprising turn on December 28, 1970. The FLQ members involved in the kidnapping, including their leader Paul Rose, engaged in a final standoff with the government, involving several bombs. During the standoff, negotiations took place, and eventually an agreement was reached. In exchange for the release of James Cross, the FLQ members would be granted safe passage to Cuba. But how this would take place was even more crazy and unheard of. A small part of Montreal, the Canada Pavilion, located on Notre Dame Island, would be declared Cuban territory for a period, and the FLQ members would be driven by police escort holding bombs from their hideout in Montreal North to where the exchange would take place. On December 29, 1970, after 60 days in captivity, James Cross would be released, unharmed.
James Cross is tonight a free man.
With the kidnappers now out of the country, James Cross thanks the police for their efforts.
Following the hostage release, the FLQ members boarded a plane and left Canada heading for Cuba. Since of Cuban sympathizers being sympathetic to their communist and socialist movement, they were able to board a plane and skirt all of the normal rules and escape to freedom in Cuba. The Quebec October Crisis concluded with the release of James Cross and the FLQ members making an escape to Cuba. It remains a vivid reminder of the complexities and challenges faced by a nation gripped with separatism and political unrest. As we reflect on the events of the October Crisis, we are reminded of the resilience of a nation and the ongoing pursuit of unity amidst diversity. And as someone who's lived my whole life in Quebec, I hope this gives you a taste of Quebec culture and unique mix of cultures we have going on here. I hope you would come and visit the province and see our amazing history, and I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been AGB with We Love Hip Hop. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Have a blessed day.
We love hip hop.